Hi, I'm Al. Hi, I'm Carter. Poke, poke.
And I'm Dad. Welcome to the Greenman Show. Alright, you may stumble across these equations on the internet. I found this one on Facebook, and I thought it was really funny because I found another one. It was the exact same equation, but they switched the variable to p instead of t. So when we look at this, we can rearrange it to make it a quadratic function by subtracting 6 from both sides and setting the equation equal to 0. You end up with 1 for A, -1 for B, and then -6 for C. And then that is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So I want to show a few ways to solve this. First, we're going to solve it by hand 3 different ways, and then we will use my HP15C emulator to solve it with the quadratic equation, and then we'll use the solver too. But what I will say is the quadratic equation is going to give us both solutions at the same time. The solver, per solve fashion, you have to give it an initial guess. So we have to enter a range, and it will give you one answer. However, you must realize that you need to put in some different values to get the second root. Here we go. We have t squared minus t equals 6. So we need to get this to equal 0. Subtract 6 from both sides. 0. We end up with t squared minus t minus 6 equals 0. Now when we look at this, we can just pick out a couple of factors, right? So we have t squared negative t6, so we're going to have 2 t's. And we know one's going to be negative to get 6. And looking at the t, we have a negative t, so we can do 2 and 3. And if we do positive 2, negative 3, we will get negative t. And then negative 2 times, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. So we're going to have t minus 3 and t plus 2 and set those each individually equal to 0, and we will get our t equals 3 or -2. So that's one method to figure it out. Just simply look at it and can you pull some factors out, right? So if we plug those back in, 3 squared minus 3 equals 6. 3 squared is 9, minus 3 is 6. That works. Now, let's plug in -2. So -2 squared, and that's going to look like that, minus or in this case, plus 2 equals 6. So negative 2 squared is going to be 4 plus 2, and that equals 6. When you look at this, you need to be cognizant that you're going to have two separate values for t because it's a quadratic equation. Now, another way to look at this, or solve it by hand, is to use the quadratic equation. So we'll move this up. So normally this is written as x, but in this case it'll be t. So t equals negative b square root of b plus and minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we already rewrote our equation from above, so I'll jot that back down. We've got t squared minus t minus 6 equals 0. Now, we can pretend that there's an a, a b, and this is c. So from our equation, a equals 1, b equals negative 1, and c equals negative 6. And then we can plug those in. So a negative of a negative 1 is going to be positive 1. So we're going to have 1. Say t equals 1 plus and minus the square root of b squared, so negative 1 squared, minus 4 times 1 times negative 6, all over 2 times a, which is 1. Now we'll simplify a handful of parts at the same time. So we're going to have 1 plus and minus the square root of 1. And then this is going to turn into a positive, so 1 plus 4 times 6, 24, over 2. One plus and minus root 25 over 2. It's going to give us 1 plus and minus 5 all over 2, which is going to be 4 and 6 over 2. I should have said negative 4 over 2 and 6 over 2, which gives us negative 2 and 3. So that gives us the same answer as before when we just picked apart the roots, right? There's one other way that we can look at doing this by hand. And again, you need to be cognizant that there's going to be 2 roots. We could just pick numbers and plug them in and see what happens. So again, we've got t squared minus t minus 6 equals 0. What if we just pick some values, right? So I started with 4. 4 squared minus 4 minus 6 equals, so 4 squared is 16 minus 4 is 12 minus 6 still gives us 6. So that did not equal 0. So let's go down to 3. 3 squared minus 3 minus 6. 3 squared is 9, minus 3 is 6, minus 6 equals 0. So there's one answer. 3. Now this is why I said you need to be cognizant of the second root. Let's just plug in -4 again. -4 squared plus 4 minus 6 equals, so you end up with 16, 20 minus 6 is 14, so that does not equal 0. So let's go with 3. And that changes to a positive, so plus 3 minus 6 equals 9 plus 3 is 12, minus 6 is 6, so that's not right. Let's try -2 squared plus 2 minus 6 equals, alright, 4 plus 2 is 6, minus 6 equals 0. So your second root is -2. Okay, so there's 3 ways that we could find the roots of t squared minus t equals 6, or t squared minus t minus 6 equals 0. Now we're going to take a look at doing it 2 ways on the HP15C or the MG15C emulator. The first way is with solve. The problem with solve is that you have to know and have a rough estimate of where both roots are, and it will give you one answer at a time. And then the second way we'll look at doing it on the calculator is with the quadratic equation programmed in that we can run through the program. Okay, now that we've seen the 3 ways to solve it by hand on paper, we'll dig into my MG15C emulator, which follows the same steps as an HP15C calculator. I have the quadratic equation in the programs. It's in label E. And the way that the program works is we enter A first, so 1, enter. Then we enter B, which is -1, enter. And then 6 is C, and that's negative, so we'll change the sign there. And then we will run program E, and we get 3 and -2. Okay. Now we will put this in the solve. So I'm going to clear my registry, and then the statistics will also clear my stack. So we'll clear the statistics. Now we need to enter the program. So to do that, we'll go G program, and I want to make sure that we're all the way to the end. Alright, so this was the last line. This was the return for the quadratic equation program. So now we will press F, label, we'll put this in program A. Then our first, it was 1t squared. So we will square. So remember that in solve, it fills up the X stack with the initial guess for the variable we're trying to solve for. So we square that. Now we're going to do an XY swap to bring that X back down into the X stack. And then change sign. So that gives us our negative X or our negative T. And then, so since we changed the sign, we can add that. And then here, instead of add, we'll just do 6 and then subtract. We need our return. And then we can exit program mode. Now we need our first initial guesses. So it was 3 and negative 2. So let's go with 1 and 4. And then we'll do F solve label A. And we get 3. These are some other pertinent values here. We won't delve into those right now. Okay, so there's our first root is T equals 3. Now we need to give the second guess to get the negative root. So to do that, we know it's negative 2, so let's go 1, change sign, and 3, change sign. F solve A, and there's our negative 2. So there's 2 ways on the calculator, the quadratic equation in the program, and then with the solver. I would prefer the quadratic equation just because it's going to give us both roots at the same time. The problem with solve is you need to have some initial guesses, and it's only going to give you one answer. But that's the way to do it, both ways, on the HP15C or my MG15C emulator. Thank you.